Alright, if you made it to this video, take a second to do two very important things. Number 1, gently tap that like button. Number 2, leave a comment down below. There's this idea that rich people like to throw around called financial freedom. Most people believe that just saving money will make them financially free. Like, for example, if you need $1,000 to buy something and you were able to save up that entire $1,000, then sure, I guess you are financially free to buy that thing. So then what does? Well, one way to combat inflation is through investing. When you invest your money, you're essentially lending it out to a company or a project or an asset in hopes that it will grow in value. If you lend your $1,000 to Apple and they use that $1,000 to make even more money and they pay you 10% of that extra money they made, then you would receive an extra $100. But instead of putting his money in a savings account, he invests it in the stock market. Now, the stock market historically averages around 10% per year. So if Bob invested his money and it grew at an average of 10% per year, then his $6,000 would turn into $9,678 in 5 years. That's over $3,600 more than what Sarah had. And that's just with an average return of 10%. What's the main difference between real financial freedom and fake financial freedom? They have zero account minimums, and they make it super easy to invest your money. On top of that, you can start investing today and make your first investment with as little as $5. Well, fake financial freedom is when you simply have a lot of money in your bank account, whereas real financial freedom is when you have a diversified portfolio of investments that bring in a steady stream of income. Also, feel free to add me on social media if you want to keep in touch. I post a lot of non-investment related content over there, but I'm also pretty active in my community tab, so feel free to add me there as well. I'll see you guys in the next one. Having a lot of money in your bank account can provide you with a sense of security, but it's not a reliable way to achieve true financial freedom. Why? Because of inflation. Your money is constantly losing value due to inflation. So in order to maintain your wealth, you need to invest it. A diversified portfolio of investments is key to achieving true financial freedom. By diversifying, you're reducing your risk and increasing your chances of success. The stock market has actually averaged between 12 to 13% per year. So Bob would have made even more money than $9,678. Now, I know that was a very simplified example. Obviously, there are more factors you should consider before deciding to save or invest. And also, the stock market doesn't always grow at 10% every year. Sometimes it loses money. But my point is that if you're looking to grow your money and beat inflation, then investing is the way to go. And yes, I do realize that if you lent money to a company, you'd probably want some kind of contract that protects you from risks like the company going bankrupt. One of the most important concepts to understand when it comes to investing is the concept of compounding. Compounding is when your earnings generate additional earnings, which in turn generate even more earnings. For example, let's say you earn 10% every year on your investments. If you have $100 and it earns 10% every year, then it will grow to 110, then 121, then 133, and so on and so forth. And this effect can be exponential. Albert Einstein even called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. That's how powerful it is. And that's exactly why we have things like stocks, ETFs, and mutual funds. Age of 20. And let us say that you get an average annual return of 10. If you invest $5,000 at the age of 20 and you do untouch it until you reach 65, then your $5,000 would grow to $84,735. But if you had waited till you were 32, invest that same $5,000 at the age of 30 and you retired at 65, then your $5,000 would only grow to $31,474. So you see, the earlier you start investing, the better. And the longer your money is invested, the more time it has to compound and grow. But what if we were talking about a bigger picture? What if we were talking about retiring early or being able to retire at all? But essentially, when you buy a stock, you're buying a small piece of ownership in a company, and when that company makes money, you make money. Well, what happens then? Let's take a look at this example. Imagine two people, Sarah and Bob. They both want to buy a house for $1 million in 5 years, so they each start saving money. Sarah decides to put her money in a savings account, while Bob decides to invest his money in the stock market. Sarah saves $1,000 every month for 5 years, totaling $6,000. But after 5 years, due to inflation, the $1,000 she saved is only worth $862.84. In other words, the $1,000 she worked so hard to save for 5 years has less purchasing power than it did when she first started saving. And when you buy an ETF, you're rebuying a small piece of ownership in a basket of assets like a collection of different stocks or bonds. And again, when those assets make money, you make money. Mutual funds are similar to ETFs, except mutual funds are actively managed by a professional fund manager who buys and sells securities within the fund based on their expertise and predictions. But anyways, the point is that when you invest your money into assets like stocks or ETFs or real estate, you're hoping that the asset you choose will go up in value over time. And if it does, then great. You'll be able to sell your investment for a profit. Because saving money alone doesn't cut it when we're talking about those things. Financial freedom is where you have complete control over your financial situation. This means being able to afford the lifestyle you want without having to work all the time. But here's the thing. A lot of people actually think they have financial freedom, when really they only have what I would call fake financial freedom. Let's take a look at why. What are you currently doing to invest or save your money? And number 3, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Inflation is a decrease in the purchasing power of your money over time, which means that the value of your money is constantly decreasing. For example, if you had $1,000 today and inflation was 3%, then in 1 year, your $1,000 will be able to buy $978 worth of stuff. Essentially, the stuff you can buy with $1,000 today, you will not be able to buy with $1,000 in the future because your $1,000 will technically be worth less. The general rule of thumb is that inflation averages around 3% every single year. But since 2020, we've seen some crazy high inflation rates, with the highest we've ever seen being 9.1% back in June of 2022. That number is finally coming down now, but inflation is still pretty high at around 6%. Doing these 3 things will help me and the channel tremendously. So thank you guys so much. So here's what I want to talk about today. First, let's start off by talking about savings accounts. In order to understand why, we first have to understand something called inflation. Okay, so we know that saving money doesn't really help us when it comes to buying stuff in the future because of inflation. Now I won't go too much into detail about how those things work, because I have other videos about that. But let's say you decide to save your money instead of investing it. On the other hand, Bob also saves $1,000 every month for 5 years, totaling $6,000. Now, obviously, I'm using some very simplified examples here to show you guys why investing is better than saving. And remember, the earlier you start investing, the better. That leads us to another key point. For example, let's say you invest $5,000 at this. So now, let's talk about the main takeaway of this video. If you're interested in starting your investment journey, you can head on over to the pinned comment where I have a trusted platform linked. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe.